Look, you will speak with all those billion-dollar founders and you would ask them, how many times have you nearly died? Always a lot, right? It's always a one of my CEOs told me, we are like a cat. We have 9 lives. And how do I know that? Because I've used 8 of them already. So the reality is that this is roller coaster journey, but it's also a journey of failures. And we think we are trying to build something new that no one did before. And we think that we know exactly what we are doing, but we don't.
Uri Levine, co-founder of Waze and Move It, serial entrepreneur, investor, and author.
A driving force behind 2 of the world's most widely used mobility apps, and a global advocate for building products that solve real, everyday problems.
Hey listeners, today's guest is the co-founder of Waze, the GPS navigation app acquired by Google after just a short 6 years for $1.1 billion. He is also the founder of Move It, the public transit app acquired by Intel after only 8 years for just shy of $1 billion. These were 2 separate billion-dollar exits that were started by the one and only Uri Levine. Uri is also the author of Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution, a practical guide for entrepreneurs grounded in the lessons he learned scaling both companies from early stage idea to global impact. In today's conversation, guys, we're going to dig into what it really takes to build a problem-obsessed billion-dollar company through the outline of his book, from identifying the right pain points and navigating pivots to building 8-player teams and preparing for meaningful exits. So we have Waze and Move It, both billion-dollar companies that have had a significant impact on technology in the world, I would say. That is very impressive, very impressive.
So thank you. And, I would say this is not about technology. This is about creating value, right? So Waze and Move It creates a lot of value to a lot of users, actually more than 2 billion users globally. And the journey of entrepreneurship is about creating value.
I think that you're right, absolutely right. But also a lesson that seems like it takes a lot of us a long time to figure out too. A lot of us are obsessed about our ideas and not necessarily creating value.
This is one of the reasons that I wrote the book, Fall in Love with the Problem, Not the Solution. The book that Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, called that the Bible for entrepreneurs. And eventually he wrote a forward to my book. And the reason is very simple. Look, the journey of entrepreneurship is about value creation. If you create value, you will be successful. The simplest way to create value is solve a problem. That's the simplest way.
Yeah.
But then when you focus on the problem is going to serve as the North Star of your journey. And when you have a North Star, you're going to make less deviation from the course and increase the likelihood of being successful. But if these are not enough for you, then I would say, wait a minute, your story is going to be way more compelling if you tell a story of the problem. Just imagine that we will be here in 2007, just before I started Waze, and I will tell you that I'm going to build an AI crowdsource-based navigation system, which is essentially exactly what I did, right? And you're going to say, oh yeah, very interesting, but you don't care. If I will going to help you to avoid traffic jams, then you do care. When your customer care, they want you to be successful and they're going to help you to become successful. So go back to the beginning, start with a problem, think of a problem, a big problem, something that it's worth solving, something that the world will become a better place if you solve that. And then ask yourself, so who has this problem? If you happen to be the only person on the planet with this problem, you know what? I can recommend you a therapist. Way faster and cheaper than building a startup. But if a lot of people actually have this problem, what you really want to do next is go and speak with those people and understand their perception of the problem, and only then start to think about the solution. Because at the end of the day, if you follow this path and your solution works, it's guaranteed that you're creating value. And this is the essence of the journey. If you start with this solution, you might be building something that no one cares, and that is going to be really frustrating.
I love that. I want to ask you a question that, well, it's a juicy one that I want to start off with. And you've partially answered it already, but including yourself, we've interviewed over $40 billion founders. 5 of those, including yourself, have built more than $1 billion company. So we have Richard Koch, Tim Draper, Jeff Hoffman, and Ross Berto. So Richard Koch is the author of the 80-20 principle. Betfair was one of his companies. He built a couple more. And his method is for picking winners is being the first to the market or being able to gobble up most of the market and just focus long-term on 10 to 30% growth. That's Pretty simple. Tim Draper was a little bit different. He's invested in some of the top, most successful startups, one of the most successful VCs, I think, to ever live, to be honest. And he focuses on invest in the future with mission-backed founders, something that's viable, hold for the long term, and bet on decentralization. So he was early, like in crypto and Tesla and things like this, and Twitter. And then Ross Burdorf says his method is be obsessed with the market that you know about. Focus, like you mentioned, focus on real friction problems, be obsessed with the problem, build trust-based teams very early. You got to have the right timing, and then reiterate the company over and over, and listen over and over relentlessly. Like you mentioned, listen to the problem. So what is your strategy specifically, Uri, to build, because you've built $2 billion companies, but you've built other companies as well. So I've noticed there's a strategy or a method to building billion-dollar companies. What would you say your strategy is specifically?
The starting point is really easy, but a problem worth solving in a very, very strong team. Give me those starting point and I'm actually very happy. Now, what I do is that people identify me as the founder of Waze and obviously an entrepreneur, but I'm also a teacher. So I feel equally rewarded when I build stuff myself or I guide someone to build it. And this is, by the way, why I wrote the book, right? In order to share my know-how with other entrepreneurs and increase their likelihood of being successful. But I mentor and coach my CEOs, and I, even if some of the behaviors were not that at the beginning, they embrace them. Iterate, right? Look, building a startup is a multi-dimensional journey, right? It's a roller coaster journey with ups and downs and ups and downs. And look, you will speak with all those billion-dollar companies, founders, and you would ask them, how many times have you nearly died? Always a lot, right? It's always a lot. One of my CEOs told me, we are like a cat. We have 9 lives. And how do I know that? Because I've used 8 of them already. So the reality is that this is roller coaster journey, but it's also a journey of failures. And we think we are trying to build something new that no one did before. And we think that we know exactly what we are doing, but we don't. So we try one thing and it doesn't work. We try another thing and it doesn't work. We keep on trying different things until we find one thing that does work. If you realize that this is going to be a journey of failures, then there are 2 immediate conclusions. The first one is that if you're afraid to fail, in reality, you already failed because you're not going to try. Albert Einstein used to say that if you haven't failed, that because you haven't tried new things before. If you're going to try new things, you will fail. The second one, you want to fail fast because then you still have plenty of time to make another attempt and another attempt, another version of the product, another version of the product, another go-to-market strategy, whatever it is, you still have more attempts in your magazine, right? You have just one more bullet to shoot. Just imagine that you're trying to score from half court, right? Playing basketball, trying to score from half court. If you have one shot and you are not Steph Curry, you are likely to miss. But if you have multiple shots, you simply increase the likelihood of being successful. Roller coaster journey of failures, and very long journey. Now, if this is the case, then some of the behaviors that are critically important in the early days is iterations, right? So wait a minute, we accept the fact that we don't know and we are going to try. And we keep on trying, we're listening to the customers, we're listening to the feedback, we are keep on improving. Because if you realize that is perfect, you don't need to be perfect in order to win the market. You need to be good enough. And the way that you're going to become good enough is that you start with not good enough. And you listen to your customers and you iterate until you become good enough. And this is how you eventually going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. Coming up with the idea for Waze, let's start there because that one was first. You talk about obsessing about the problem, focusing on what is a problem that can really have an impact. Can you tell me about the process of discovering the idea for Waze and how long that took you before you decided, oh, this is something worth going out and finding a solution for and starting a business around?
So Waze started in my mind in 2006. We were actually traveling in Israel. We were in the northern part of Israel over the weekend. And when it was time to go back to Tel Aviv, then back then there were 2 main roads going back from northern part back to Tel Aviv. And we were like, over the weekend, we were like 10 cars there, right? And so everyone left already. And I started to call them up, trying to realize which route should I take. And what happened is that half of them were actually on this road. And they told me, this is terrible. This is nightmare, right? And the people that were on the other road told me it's not that bad. And then I realized that the only thing that I need is someone to be ahead of me on the road and tell me what's going on. So that was the eureka moment. But it was more than a year later that we we were actually team up with the other two co-founders, and we started to, have this, share the vision, discuss the vision, realize that this is what we're gonna do, and be able to actually create value to people to avoid traffic jams, essentially. And so we started in 2007. We started the journey, and then we needed to raise capital because the first prototype that we built was running on a PDA. Remember? Long,
Okay.
long time ago, there
Yes.
were dinosaurs and then
Yes.
PDA and then Nokia phones, and today we all have iPhones and Android. Now
Now,
you think
just so
this
I can get the timeline, this was before even Garmin came
2007.
out, correct?
This is before iPhone.
iPhone and Garmin as well, right? Or was Garmin out?
Garmin was already there. Garmin and
Okay.
Tom were already there. But this is before smartphones, right? Not really. It's before iPhone, because there
Yeah.
were already Nokia phones and smartphones with operating system and so forth. And I want us to think for a second on this time scale. This is 18 years ago. Think about the top 10 companies of the world today, right? NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Tesla, whatever it is. And ask yourself, which one of them were in the top 10 in 2007, just before I started Waze? Only one.
Which
Only
one?
one. Microsoft.
Microsoft.
That's it. Only one. This is how fast the world is changing.
Yeah.
Now, if you ask yourself, by the way, if we will go 10 years back in 2015, then there were three of them. Now you start to ask yourself, wait a minute, what does it mean about the future? What's going to happen a decade from now? Which companies of the top 10 of today are going to be in the top 10 a decade from now in 2035? Obviously, we don't know, but probably less than five. Which one? We don't know. If we would know, then I will tell you, sell short on the other and you are done. You don't need to worry about anymore. But the more interesting question is, which companies are going to take their place in the top 10? Some of those names we haven't heard yet.
Yes.
This is how fast the world is changing. Just imagine you started this podcast 10 years ago. Did you hear the name NVIDIA 10 years ago?
No.
So unless you were building computers or being in the gaming industry, you did not hear the name.
Yep.
And this is how fast it's changing. So going back into those elements, or understanding the journey, the phases of the journey, it's also, so we said it's a roller coaster journey. We say it's a journey of failures, but it's also a very long journey, way longer than you think it is. And it's the longest part is until you figure out product market fit. And product market fit is really simple. That means that you create value to your customers. If you do not figure out product market fit, you will die. That's it.
Yeah.
You never heard of a company that did not figure out product market fit. They simply died, by the way, peacefully. But for a second, I want us to think of maybe all the applications that you're using every day, right? So from searching Google, using Waze, WhatsApp, Netflix, Uber, Instagram, whatever it is, and ask yourself, what is the difference between any of those today and the first time that you have used that? And the answer is that there is no difference. We are searching Google today the same way that we search Google for the first time in our life. We're using Waze today the same way that we used Waze for the first time in our life. So once a company figure out product market fit, which is the value that they create to their customers, they don't change that anymore. How long did it take them to get there? We don't know, because beforehand we never heard a name. For Waze, it was 4 years.
Yeah.
We started in 2007. If you're an avid user of Waze, then you have started using it in 2011. That's it. For Microsoft, it was 5 years. For Netflix, it was 10 years. Like tell me today, everything is different. ChatGPT just started. Wait a minute, they're 9 years old. It was 6 years until we heard the name for the first time in our life. Now, it's a long journey to figure out product market fit. And product market fit have one metric, only one: retention. Look, it's really simple. If you create value, they will come back. That's it. If they are not coming back, that means that you are not creating value, and you will need to keep on iterate and hopefully don't die in between, right? Because most of the startups will. So this is really, really important, right? Figuring out product market fit is going to be the first part of the journey. And later on, you can start to think about, okay, how do I make money and how do I grow and so forth? And in order to figure out to become a unicorn, you will need to line up all those stars, right? So not just product market fit, but also understand how you're going to make money and how you grow.
You know, you mentioned the story of you being in the north of Israel and your group taking back 2 different routes. I'd like to dive more into really, I think this is a big pain point for the vast majority of entrepreneurs is really understanding how to find that product market fit. The buzzword now is a starving market. Where is that starving market? And then understanding, because you've done this twice with two different billion-dollar companies and a handful of times with other companies, understanding that this is something that's really, really that the market really needs. We could look at both Waze and Move It because, Waze was so early and you had Garmin and TomTom as kind of competitors, but not exactly. And then Google Maps obviously came in, and then with Move It, which was a software for transit. And how did you really, really know that these were juicy problems that a lot of people around the world were going to need fulfilled?
What I will tell entrepreneurs is start with validating a problem. Go and speak with people that you believe that actually have this problem, and go and speak with 100 of them face to face, right? You want to see their pain point. You want to not only see the pain point, but actually have the real feel of their perception of the problem. And the reason that I would say 100 is that because I want you to go and speak with people that you don't know. Otherwise, you're going to speak with your brother and a couple of best friends, and they are going to tell you, yeah, go ahead and do that. This is awesome, right? But no, you want...
Mom knows best, right?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of stuff she does, but some she doesn't. And this is critical, right? Because if you don't speak with them, you don't understand their perception of the problem. And by the way, I'll give you an example. If you go and speak with someone and explain the problem to them, and they will say, oh, I know someone that has this problem. This is a no-go, right? This is a no-go. If they will tell you, no, this is not the problem. The problem is, and they will tell you their version of the problem, this is a go. And you need those stories in order to do two things. Number one, fall in love with the problem. You will feel that they're actually sending you on a mission to solve that. And number two, when you later on tell the stories, if the stories are real, so you heard them from someone, they're way more compelling than simply making them up. And there are so many things that we have learned from users that are beyond imagination, right? We started Waze because we thought that we are going to help you to avoid traffic jams. Now, if I'll speak with people today, they will tell me, and by the way, this needs to be face-to-face, and it needs to be actually very, very significant dialogue in order to understand that. This is not the value. The value is about creating certainty. You know how long it will take you to get there. Saving time is very high value. Creating certainty, way more value. To a certain extent, I would say the dialogue with customers will always keep on going. And you have to do that. If you don't do that, then you lose connection of the market. And when you lose your connection of the market, you're starting to build stuff that they don't care. And when you do, there is someone else that is building the stuff that they do care. By the way, I'll just give you a perspective. You asked me, when did I thought about the idea and when did we start? That was relatively short period of time, right? So 2006 to 2007. 2008 was terrible year on the market. We remember that. Or
big recession.
Yeah. And then 2000, and by the way, the market dropped by about 20%, right? Beginning of 2009, I got my annual statement of my retirement saving, and I've realized that I've lost 20% on the market. And in addition, I was paying high fees, right, for lose money, essentially. And I was frustrated, not because I was losing money and not because I was paying those fees, because I didn't know. And I started to ask all of my friends how much fees you're paying, and they didn't know, and what the return and what's the comparable, and no one knew, right? And I told myself, wait a minute, if no one knows, that's a secret. That's the definition of a secret. And I decided that I'm going to build a platform that creates transparency and allow people to retire richer. I only started that in 2012, just before we sold Waze. And this is a Pontera. This is probably going to be my next unicorn. And the reality is that we help Americans to retire richer because we allow financial advisors to manage their 401k, so their retirement saving. And there are $15 trillion of retirement saving in the US today. And about 100 million Americans have 401k plans. And if I would ask 100 Americans, 100 million Americans, right? But if I would ask 100, what do you invest at in your 401k?
They don't know.
90% have no idea.
No idea.
By the way, I do know the default, whatever was the default when they sign up. And that, if you don't know then you're not doing the right thing. And so in general, I would say in retirement, go and speak with your financial advisor. We usually don't care. We are young. We don't care. That's, by the way, the nature of the beast. When you're young, you don't care. And when you start to care, it's too late.
Yeah.
Then go and speak with a financial advisor that will help you to manage your 401k, or at least will help you to think about it. So going back into this, and that was from 2009 until 2012. And there are some ideas that I think of and I may not ever solve them, or it might take longer until the incubation might be longer. And this is the beauty of the problem, right? The good news is that there are a lot of problems, and the bad news is that there are a lot of problems.
Very true. One thing I like to ask, and this might be a tricky question, but a fun one, I think, is I like to ask the guests, if you were going to break the growth, let's focus on Waze. If you're going to break the growth of Waze into chapters, what would be the name of each chapter for the growth of Waze specifically?
So here is the challenge. The challenge is that Waze is unfair. I will explain to you the growth, and that's really easy, but it's not necessarily replicate.
Okay.
If you are using something new, a new product, and you like it, then there is some chances that you are going to tell someone else, maybe 10%, and maybe 10% that someone else is actually going to listen to you. Waze growth is word of mouth, and the reason is frequency of use. So if there is every time that you use Waze, there is 1% that as a result of that, you're going to bring someone else to use Waze. If you are using Waze once a year, then this is not going to have an impact. If this is once a month, not a significant impact. You're going to have organic growth of about 12.5%. If this is once a week, it's starting to become interesting. But if this is every day, then all of a sudden you're going to enjoy word of mouth growth. And if I would ask now 100 people that are using Waze, how did you hear about Waze? Most of them are going to tell me, oh, someone told me. That's word of mouth. Now, everyone would like to have word of mouth, but for that, you need to have either high frequency of use or long sustainable value. If you have a very long journey and you become known, then you will become word of mouth growth. But in all other cases, you will actually need to acquire users. You will need to have the traditional go-to-market strategy of acquiring users through Facebook ads, Google ads, SEO, whatever you want, right? And in general, I would say when you start your go-to-market plan, I want you to go into the whiteboard and write 50 different ways to bring your customers. 50 different ways.
50, right?
50, yeah. Now, if you are sitting in front of the whiteboard and you were able to generate only 17 of them, then bring more people to help you to generate 50 and then start. Each one of them is going to be an experiment. Each one of them is going to be an experiment. We don't know which one is going to work. And I would like to say that, oh, I have better gut feeling than other people. Okay, I agree. But it still doesn't put me in a position that I know which one is going to work. And in general, simply start, right? Simply start and measure. And so I would tell you, start with those that you can figure out if they're working or not in the shortest period of time. If you can run this experiment tomorrow, and by the end of tomorrow, you would know if it's working, start with that.
Yeah.
Now, there is something that is really, really critical in the culture that we are building that requires here. This is going to be a journey of failures. It's a list of 50 experiments, 50 experiments that we are going to make. We don't know which one is going to work. Your guess is good as mine. And that is a very humble approach, because we are basically saying, wait a minute, I'm going to be successful not because I know to guess better, because I'm simply going to make more attempts.
So is this in regards to coming up with an idea for a business or a way to implement the business, like ideas for growth?
So the growth, look, we say that there are three critical journeys, right? So figuring out market fit, growth, and business model. And product market fit is always going to be the first one, because if you don't, then you will die. If you do, then you get an opportunity to die another day. Actually, you are likely to be successful, right? If you create value, you're likely to be successful. Which one of the journey you're going to do next? What I've seen is that most companies are trying growth because it's way more sexier, and it's going to be way easier to raise new funding round if you actually can hack growth.
Yeah.
But then they realize that this is expensive and they haven't figured that out. And then they realize that, wait a minute, if I would need to acquire users, then what I really need to do is figure out business model first. And then I can actually do that. Look, if you can generate X amount of dollars per user, per customer, and it's going to cost you less than a third of that, you have a machine. Raise more capital, invest in marketing, and this is a machine. This is a growing machine that you can grow that more and more and more, and it's working. I think that you mentioned earlier that you had the guy from Booking, right? Hoffman.
Hoffman, yeah.
They built a machine.
Yep.
They made money for each and every transaction, right? So once you do that, you can invest heavily in user acquisition because you know how to make money out of that.
Yeah.
So in general, if you don't have high frequency of use, then I would say go to figure out your business model before you're trying to hit growth.
Can you elaborate a little more on that? Because you look at, Priceline. For me anyway, like we'll just use Booking now because Priceline's pretty much the same. I use Booking maybe once every other month, to book a car, to book a hotel, or to book a flight or something, right? So it's not high frequency of use, whereas opposed Waze is daily.
Right. So Booking is not. It's not
Right.
word of mouth for them. They actually acquired users. They acquired users because they were making money every time that you made a booking through the platform.
Okay.
And they made actually quite a lot of money that allows them to invest heavily in user acquisition. And so if you have high frequency of use, then eventually you're going to end up with word of mouth no matter what you're going to start with.
Okay.
And therefore, you don't need to invest a lot in user acquisition, and you will enjoy exponential growth by itself.
Okay.
And therefore, if this is the case, then you are going to capture the market before you even know how to make money out of it, because you're going to get the market does not click. This is one thing that we have to remember. If you are good enough, your customers are not going to go away. There is no, in particular, if you're free, right? Free and good enough wins the market. No one can compete with that. There is no value proposition that someone can tell you that will make you switch away from something that is good enough.
Yeah.
Your reaction is going to be always the same. What do you want from me? This is good enough. That's it, right? People don't like changes. And so if you have something that is good enough, you win the market and you keep it. And so in the case of Waze, the word of mouth was really what happens. But if we are using Booking.com or Priceline back then, by the way, the only difference is it's the same company, right? Different names in Europe versus the US. But the reality is that because they were making money off the transaction, they were able to actually bring a lot of users through paid acquisitions, right? So they invested heavily in marketing, in paid acquisition, and each one of those that were translated into paying customers paid enough to fuel the engine for the next one and the next one and the next one. And that was very, very good working system for them and ended up to be beautiful.
I have a question about keeping people to use the product. So, we look at Priceline and Booking, and they continue to acquire more people, and then they became one company. And now you look at Waze, and Waze, you exited after roughly 6 years, but Waze is still out there and it's still very popular, but it has competitors, right? And so when the competition comes in, what are some of the strategies and things that you guys make sure you focus on to ensure that people keep using your service versus what the competitors are bringing in and using, especially when you get a company like a massive company like Google, or I think at the time we had MapQuest.
So look, the reality is that, and this is, I'm taking us into a bit of history.
Okay.
So MapQuest was showing you a map, but it did not take you through turn-by-turn navigation, right? It was not guiding you into turn left and turn right and so forth. And Google was actually the same until 2010.
Okay.
And the reason is that the map maker, the way that maps were being built up until that moment is that, all the mapping companies had survey vehicles, and they were driving all the roads multiple times and measuring everything in order to create the data of the map. And that was pretty expensive. Now, Waze crowdsourced the map data itself, not just traffic information, the map data. So when you drive someplace, we know that there is a road. If you're making left turn, then we know that left turn is allowed, right? And if there are a lot of people driving into a certain direction, then we know that this is a main road. And if no one is driving the other direction, that will be one-way street, right? And so forth. And so we create the algorithm to generate the map through crowdsource. And because of that, the map that we were creating was very inexpensive and free. And Waze was free. And everyone else back then was either expensive or did not offer turn-by-turn navigation, right? So the uniqueness was that we offered turn-by-turn navigation for free. And the real uniqueness is that we actually had traffic information, actionable traffic information. So we route people to avoid traffic jams. And the focus was on the daily commuters, not on the navigators, on the daily commuters. So taking you to your office where you know how to get there. You definitely know how to get to your office. You actually know multiple ways to get to your office. But which one of them today is what you don't know. And we needed that because, wait a minute, in order for us to actually have good enough traffic information, we need a lot of drivers out there to drive with Waze. And so the free was on purpose in order to reach critical mass. The result is that people are not switching away from Waze. And if I would ask people that are using Waze, how often do you use Waze? They will tell me every day. Google Maps is something completely different. By the way, Google invests a lot of money in order to make their maps, but they can afford it.
Okay, let's apply this same question to other types of businesses. So, the answer is Waze was incredibly unique on a daily basis to solve traffic problems, the quickest route from point A to point B. And that kept people using Waze. What would be the questions that founders could ask themselves about keeping people using their business overlapping for all different types of businesses? Or not just the questions, but that could be the things to think about. Because I look at my business and I'm like, okay, how can I keep people using this? For me, it's kind of like a Facebook and Insta, kind of like constantly upgrades, even though users may say they don't want upgrades, but it keeps people engaged in the newness of the business. I guess you could say that. So that's kind of what I'm getting at is for the listeners, what can we think about that can keep us on top of our customers continually using our business year after year?
So, the number one is the value that we generate for them, right? If we don't generate value for them, then we are not going to have them. The number two is keep on maintaining this value. And just think about Google search. This is the first and probably most used product of Google. And it's actually at risk today. I know a lot of people. I'm teaching here at the university, right? I do ask students, how many of you are going to ChatGPT before they go to Google? And this number is increasing semester after semester and probably day after day. And so wait a minute, all of a sudden there is something else that turns out to be simpler, better, more value, not necessarily the same accuracy, but still people perceive that as more valuable. And so as soon as someone will figure out something that turns out to be way more valuable, and in this case, by the way, it's simpler, right? We are lazy. We are lazy. And ChatGPT give you, everything that you needed. Otherwise, you would go into Google, you will search different websites, then you will fine tune your search, and then eventually you will need to read the website to see if this is something that provides you the information. So ChatGPT is simpler. And because of that, it's going to gain momentum over search. I would recommend that if the facts are important, then you go and validate them, because occasionally it's not the case. But in general, I would say the reality is that you need to add more products slowly.
Okay.
How many products Google have?
But at this point, who knows?
Okay, so the reality is that if you think about it, okay, wait a minute, there are a few very, very significant, right? Search, Home, YouTube, Google Maps or Waze, and obviously, Android, but not tons of products that are being used by everyone. How many products have they tried and shut down?
Probably. Yeah, go ahead.
So the reality is that you need to keep on doing those experiments in order to figure out how you can create value to your customers. By the way, email is one of the most successful common products of Google. And later on, by the way, they added the calendar, right? And so it makes perfect sense, the calendar and mail together. No one even think about the idea that it was not there from the beginning, but it was not there from the beginning. And so the power of that is that you keep on experiments as a corporate, because you need to find what else you can do. The challenge of adding features is that when you add features, you create complexity.
Yeah.
When you add features, you create complexity.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, Steve Wozniak wrote the foreword to my book, and I met him the first time about 10 years ago at a conference in Guatemala. And look, when I grew up, Steve Wozniak was the technological guru of the world. He was the guy. That's it. And growing up as a software engineer and a technical guy at the beginning, I really wanted to meet him one day. And 10 years ago, here comes the opportunity to meet him for the first time in our life, and we were both carrying keynote speech at the conference. And the organizer arranged for the dinner the night before of the keynote speakers, right? And I like that, right? And what I really wanted is to have a selfie with him. And so I took out my iPhone, and I was lucky to have an iPhone. And when you want to take a picture with the iPhone, you can click here.
Yeah.
Or you can use the volume button on the side, right? And this is exactly what I did. I was holding it like that and taking a selfie by clicking on the volume button. And he said, finally. And I said, finally what? Finally someone using it the way that I meant it to be.
With the volume button?
Now, when you think about it, it made perfect sense, right? The first iPhone was an evolution from PDA, smartphone, and digital cameras. This is how we used to take picture with the digital cameras. We were clicking right here where the volume button is. But people are not using it this way. People are using it differently. And this is really, really, really important to realize. For me, that was an inspiration to write one of my chapters that calls You Are Only a Sample of One, Understanding Users. And let me try here something, right? And usually I do that when we have more audience, but I think that for your audience, it's going to work. For people that are using Waze, Waze guides you to your destinations in two different ways. Right? One is that it shows you on the screen what you need to do, right? What's the maneuver, what's the turn that you need to take, and when exactly it's going to happen, and so forth. And the other one, it has audio prompts that tells you turn right, turn left, and so forth. When I ask people to, if they are, watching the screen, then about 80% will raise their hand. And if you're listening to the audio prompts, then there are less than 20% listen to the audio prompts. And then I tell them, look, up until now, you didn't know that. And to be frank, you didn't care. But there are different people that are using the same product differently. From today, you do know that, and you still don't care. If you're building the product and you don't know that, you are building the wrong product. The only way that you're going to find out is watch your users. And you need to keep on watching your users and asking them why they're doing what they're doing throughout the entire lifetime of the product. At the beginning, it's critical, right? Because otherwise, there's no way that you're going to reach product market fit. But if you want to maintain the product relevant, then you need to keep on doing that.
What are some ways that you guys did that at Waze? You think about it, obviously your bandwidth as the founder and CEO is limited, and I'm sure you're talking to your team and talking to an occasional customer, some customers, but I'm curious, what I'm really looking for, Uri, is a method or a regular method of okay, because most of our listeners probably have 6 or 7 figure companies, and a good amount of people probably have 8-figure companies. How do we, on a regular basis, implement that with the more limited time and resources that we have? Starting a business, obviously, okay, let's talk to 100 people and really dig into the problem. Make sure that it's there. And when you start a business, you have the time and resource to do that. But as you grow that business more and more, how often should you talk to the customers about the problem? How often are you having people on the team do this monthly, daily? Are you talking to people only when they file a complaint or future potential customers? I'm curious about some sort of method around that.
As a CEO, you should keep, as a product lead as well, you should keep on speaking always, right? Now, obviously, less and less and less people, right? You don't need to speak with people every day anymore, but you need to keep on maintaining those dialogues twice a week or whatever to keep you on the front page, right? Otherwise, you are going to get interpretations, and you want to have the real deal. I would say something about growing a company, right? And look, we focus a lot on the journey and the product and the product market fit phase and so forth, and the idea. And the real focus is on the people.
Okay.
There is a chapter in my book called Firing and Hiring. And when I sent the book proposal to some of the publisher, they told me, oh, it should be hiring and firing. And I said, no, firing is a hard decision. Hiring is an easy decision. You have to learn how to make the hard decisions first. Now, it comes from dialogues that I had with entrepreneurs that their startup failed, and I asked them why, what happened. And about half told me the team was not right. And I kept on asking, okay, what do you mean the team was not right? And what I heard the most is, we had this guy not good enough and this guy not. So not good enough was the main reason. Another reason that I heard quite often is that we had communication issues, something that I actually called ego management issues. And then I asked them the most interesting question: when did you know that the team is not right? Now, the answer was scary. All of them told me within the first month. within the first month and say, wait a minute, if you knew within the first month that the team is not right and you didn't do anything, the problem was not that the team was not right. The problem was that the CEO did not make hard decisions. Making hard decisions is hard. Making easy decisions is easy. This is why most people don't like to make the hard decisions. And in a small organization like a startup, it will go all the way to the top, to the CEO to make that hard decision. Now, if the CEO does not make that hard decision, the result is always the same. The top performing people would leave. They would leave because they don't want to be in an organization that is unable to make the hard decisions, and they would leave because they have a choice. Now, when it comes to, and by the way, to a certain extent, I would say, think about small organization, right? Think about your history, right? When you've been at a small organization of 10, 20, 30 people, and there was someone that shouldn't be there, you knew. Everyone knew.
Everyone knew.
Everyone knows. And the CEO doesn't do anything. That's the nature of the beast. By the way, this is why they would leave. Now, one of the strongest advice that I have in order to build awesomeness into organization goes to the question of, when the organization is starting to grow bigger and bigger, obviously we will have normal distribution of all the people, right? We'll have amazing people and very good people and good people and less than good, less than average people and some people that shouldn't be there. Let's imagine that you're running this organization and you only have two options, right? One is hiring another amazing person. Two is firing someone that shouldn't be there. Which one of those options is going to have a bigger impact? Obviously, firing the one that shouldn't be there. And the reason is very simple. Everyone knows.
And everybody wants them out.
Everyone wants them. By the way, as soon as you do that, then people will start to tell you, thank you for doing that. It was about time. Which basically means you were late by months.
Exactly.
My conclusion of that is, and this is the very, very important rule of building awesomeness, is that every time that you hire someone new, you mark your calendars for 30 days down the road, and you ask yourself one question. Knowing what I know today, would I hire this person?
Nice.
Now, if the answer is no, then fire them immediately. They are set on a trajectory of not being successful already. They're creating damage to you, to the entire organization, and to themselves. This is already done deal, right? If the answer is yes, go to this person and tell them that they are exceeding your expectations and that you're really happy that they have joined, and give them more equity. This is exactly the time to establish the trust and the loyalty with someone that is exceeding your expectation. By the way, we don't make those hard decisions for two reasons, right? So one is, we all would like to think of ourselves as good people, right? And good people don't hurt other people. And if we fire them, then we hurt them. No, we are actually doing them a favor. They are not going to be successful here, but they do deserve a chance to be successful, even though that it's not going to be here. And so this is really, really dramatic. And I would say this is critical for the health of the organization. The other part, and again, we're going back into the normal distribution. Okay, we have A players here. Losing A players is equally as bad as keeping someone that shouldn't be there. The same reason. Everyone knows. You go back into those organizations and I would ask you, okay, you definitely knew people that shouldn't be there, right? But you also knew who are the A players. Everyone knows. If you're losing an A player, everyone knows. Now, A players are very, very important to keep. And there are 3 rules to keep A players. Only 3 rules. If you follow those, then you're going to be successful in keeping those. Number 1, they also know that they're A players. So they need the reward and the recognition. You need to tell them, look, you're doing an amazing job. You're carrying the load of 5 other engineers, right? Or you're doing more than anyone else. And by the way, reward them accordingly. So reward and recognition is the first one. The second one is that they need to know why.
Why they're there.
Why they're doing what they're doing. They need to know the reason for what they're actually going to do. It's not enough that they know what to do. They need to know why. And by the way, they also need that why to be important, right? So the third element is that they need to move the needle. If they're going to work on something that is not important, no, they will go someplace else that they have the chance to work on something that is important. And the beauty of that is that you create this alignment and you keep the A players. You keep the A players, you get rid of people that shouldn't be there, and you build awesomeness into your organization. The result is that you're going to end up with way less attrition than anyone else and increase your likelihood of winning.
What happens, Uri, if you have 2 A players that love the company, that are on board, that are moving the way that the company's supposed to be moved, but they can't get on the same page for some reason, or they're just butting heads too much and too often, if they can't A play together?
So we mentioned the normal distribution scale, right? But we didn't say what this scale is all about, right?
Yeah.
So we would like to think about performance. Okay, performance is one, but also they could be about fit into the organization. One of them does not fit.
Right.
If you want to build team efforts, right? If you want to build a team that wins, then you will need to make sure that people and their ego have plenty of space for other people. You have someone that is a rock star, but his ego can fill the Coldplay stadium. I had to say that someday.
Right.
Um,
Good plug.
then you have a problem because people don't feel comfortable working with this person. Right?
Yeah.
When we started Waze, and this is really, really important story, we decided that Waze is going to be the best working place we ever had. So we put a lot of effort into the DNA and the culture of the company because we wanted it to build a company that we really like. And the reason that we did that is in 1999, three friends of mine started a startup called Human Click. You never heard the name. And a year later, they were acquired by LivePerson. LivePerson is actually a public company. You probably heard the name. And usually, if your company is being acquired, then the acquirer will ask you to stay 2 or 3 years, whatever it is. And then what happens if they ask you to stay 3 years? Then first year, you're making all of your efforts to make integration work, right? And second year, you're starting to look for someone to replace you. And then third year, you're starting to think about your new venture. And after 3 years and one day, you leave and you start your next venture.
Mm-hmm.
These three friends of mine stayed there until 2007, 7 years, just before we started Waze. And I asked them why. And they told me that was the best working place we ever had. And we decided that we're going to build Waze as the best working place we ever had. And by the way, later companies like Pontera was the same, right? We basically say this is even more important for us than making an impact. The way that we are going to be successful is the first and most important stakeholder are the employees of the company. And when you build your company this way, then two things happen. Number one, you increase the likelihood of being successful. Number two, you really like what you're doing. You go every day to the office with a smile on your face, even if it's hard. And by the way, during the roller coaster journey, the reason that you're not going to give up is because of the team that you brought on board. And the reason that the team is not going to give up is because of you. And when you get there, then this is going to be the best journey of your life.
I like that. I like that. I don't know if you remember the story. So I think a lot about building an A-player team with an analogy of building a World Cup or a Super Bowl team. And the CEO's job or the founder's job is to continually build that team, just the way a manager of a football club, a World Club team, or football, U.S. football team would do, to continually bring on the right people onto the team to make it work. So there's an example, you're in Madrid now, I'm in Barcelona. Messi was playing for Barcelona, and in the early days, they brought on Zlatan, I don't know how to say his last name, Ibrahimovic, I believe. And I don't know how long he played for, but his personality was too big to compete with Messi's, and he didn't last very long on the Barcelona football soccer team, even though he's an A player. And so he had to go somewhere else into another team where he could fit. You look at that as like, that's a really hard decision for a founder to make, especially if a founder is not, which I would say a lot of us are probably not great at firing. You get two A players who essentially, want to win the championship, want to take the company to a certain level, but both those A players are just so good. And then you've got to let one go because the way that Barcelona had to let go of Zlatan because he wasn't playing ball the way that they needed to play ball in order for the team to succeed. And I couldn't imagine how challenging that would be for a person to do, for a founder to do, especially when they're new at it.
It's not easy. These are the hard decisions, right? And this is the one that you describe is the hardest one, right? So what do you do, right? And to a certain extent, I would say as soon as you set your priorities, then you know what is the right thing to do. At the end of the day, what you really want, one of the things that the A players does is not only that they excel in what they're doing, they make everyone else better. And in your description, there is one of them that is not.
Yeah.
We are people, not machines, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Somebody's performance is average, but in general makes everyone around them better.
Yeah.
This is awesome. This is someone that I would ask them to lead a team, right? Because they make everyone around them better.
Yep. That's a really good example. Let's go to, I think we've touched probably on most all of the chapters here that you have in the book, except to chapter 12, the last one, giving back into founder's legacy. So us as entrepreneurs have an incredible capacity to give. We have to give of our time, ourselves, sacrifice sacrificing a lot of things in order for the success of the company, give to the employees, give to the customers and clients. In some aspects, to a point where it's draining, to where we have to balance our own lives, right? So when does giving back come into play for you that creates that legacy from what you've done with the companies you've built?
I have a very simple life. I have a purpose. I have a destiny. I have a mission, right? And this is about value creation. So as long as I can create value, then I will keep on going. And I'm lucky to have multiple ways that I can actually create value. And I in my dreams, I hope that there is someone that is going to listen to this podcast. And I've changed things for him. I actually increased his likelihood of being successful. I made an impact. If this is the case, then I fulfill my destiny. And this is the giving back, right? And so, some people will tell you, wait a minute, you only become a leader after you can grow someone to become a leader, and that someone can grow someone else to become a leader, right? So in that sense, I would like to believe that I'm a leader, but I'm by and large, my destiny, my purpose is about value creation. So if I can create value, and by the way, value you create for others, that's it. And if I can do that, then I'm happy to do it.
And you mentioned that you keep your life simple. And I think a lot of people perceive individuals at your level as not having a simple life. So could you share a bit on how you keep your life simple and what your life looks like?
So look, the driver for me is value creation, right? And so anything that can create value, I'm already happy to do that. This is really important, right? Because if you think about it, then when you create value, you are meaningful. The opposite is being meaningless. No, you don't want to be meaningless. You want to be meaningful. And so for me, this is not about, this is not about lifestyle. This is about creating value.
And how do you apply that specifically?
And by the way, I just said, right, if we had this meeting face to face, and I wouldn't be taking my private jet because I don't have one. Most likely I would take the train.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, you'll say, okay, wait a minute, this is 2 hours and 40 minutes from Madrid to Barcelona, and you don't need to wait in security lines. You don't need to waste any time. You can simply go there and that's it, right?
Yeah.
Very simple.
Yeah. How else do you apply that to your life, Uri? So giving value is great. Like that's based around your purpose. We can give value to anybody. And I want to ask you more specifically, what does a day in the life of Uri look like? Because for me, giving value can be anything from smiling and saying hi to the person in the supermarket.
Which is also a good idea.
Which is a great idea. And it enriches your life. Have a regular person that cuts your hair for many years and get to know them, right? And every time you go and get your hair cut, it's like visiting an old friend. Things like this. This is adding value.
I really like my hairdresser.
I bet he charges you a lot of money because you've got a great haircut.
I do it myself.
Oh, that's even better. You can. Yeah,
I don't like the feel of the hair, and so I do that in the bathroom and immediately get into the shower, and this is it.
It's done. Yeah, I like that. I wish I could do that, but I can't. Yeah, what's a day in the life of Uri Levine look like?
Look, I have 10 active startups, right? And so most of the time I'm spending with them. And then I'm teaching here in Madrid, and I'm doing, I would say, maybe 15, 20 keynote and workshops per year in other places. So I am busy. I am very busy. And this is me, right? I get up in the morning. I read all of my emails. By the way, I would say two things. One is Mark Randolph, one of the founders of Netflix, wrote the endorsement to my book, and I read someplace that he reads all of his emails as well. And so I sent him an email and I said, look, we have three things in common, right? Number one, I'm reading all of my emails as well. Number two, I'm using your product, you're using mine. And he wrote a book called This Will Never Work. And I told him I heard it more times than he did. And later we became friends and so forth. You should invite him to the podcast. If he does podcast, it's going to be awesome. He's an amazing person.
Yeah.
And by the way, he was recently here in Madrid at the South Summit conference.
Yeah.
But anyhow, what I'm saying is that I'm very busy, right? It's not but if there is an entrepreneur that is going to send me an email and asking for a point of view or advice or whatever, he is going to get it.
Yeah, that's nice.
Because I think it's my mission, right? Part of my mission is to share the know-how that will help the next generations of entrepreneurs. And at the end of the day, today, you look at the top 10 companies of the world today, and all of them were startups not that long time ago.
Yeah.
And so that means that startups are going to change the world. Entrepreneurs are going to change the world. In my mind, they are already heroes because they are trying to change the world.
I would love so I'd like to ask this question, and feel free not to answer it if you don't want to, but what do you think is one startup that is really, really needed in the world that has not been created yet, that might be one of the top 10 years from now?
So I want us to think for a second on medical services in the US. They are 5 times more expensive than they are in Germany.
Yeah.
It's not that they're better, they're
No.
5 times more expensive.
Yeah.
Which basically means that, wait a minute, there is a lot of inefficiency in these 5 times higher cost, right? So this market is ready for disruption. It's ripe for disruption. It's not the only market. In general, I would say anything that you're doing in your life, the same way that your parents did, is calling for disruption.
Great answer. Okay, we're going to wrap things up here, but I want to mention a couple things. One, I really like this interview because I like the way you think. I was actually taking notes during the interview too. I do that from time to time. I'm like, oh, that's a juicy one. Oh, I've got to apply that one. But I love how you obsess about solving a problem. And I understand why you named the book what you did now, because it is essential and counterintuitive to most people out there when they start a business to obsess about the problem. And what I see so many people doing is getting excited about their own creative solution and wanting to give it out to the world and spending a lot of time and money and wasting a lot of time and money because they're in love with the solution and not the problem. Same thing in real estate. Don't fall in love with a house, fall in love with a deal. Same philosophy. And if we can obsess about falling in love with the problem, then you can solve more problems and make more money, which is great. And then I also like how you looking at the frequency of use of a business before you come in and how you can increase the frequency of use, which, again, is solving people's problems. First thing is if people want to learn more about your book or where's the best place they can do that at?
So, you can go to my website, urilevine.com. You can definitely go and buy the book. This is available in English, in Spanish, in Portuguese, Japanese, and Chinese. Amazon is a good place to start, but also in some of the stores you can find it. And that is going to be an awesome starting point. If you want to follow me, then I'm mostly active on LinkedIn. Not that active, but way more than other social networks. So if you'll find me on Instagram, you might, but it's not going to help you because I'm not there.
Fantastic. And the website was urilevine.com, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, good. Any final parting words for the listeners?
One of the things that I always encourage my children is not to be afraid to fail. And I will take that one step further, right? If you have children, teach them to fail. At the end of the day, there is only one thing that we really wish for our kids. We want them to be happy. We don't necessarily know what happiness means for them, but we want them to be happy. In order for them to find out, they need to explore. If they're going to be afraid to fail, they're not going to explore that. Teach them to fail.
Wise words. Uri, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for tuning in. And listeners, thank you guys for tuning in once again. But it was a great episode. Thank you, Uri.
Thank you.
Listeners, we're going to wrap up there. If you like what you're hearing, you want to make sure you don't miss any of these episodes, be sure to like and subscribe and share with your friends. We'll see you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.